Now, to discuss this issue in more detail, we have with us in the studio Professor Kim Hyun-wook from the Korea National Diplomacy Academy. Professor, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Now, as the previous report just said, North Korea has announced it will dismantle its Punggye-ri nuclear test site and it will invite foreign journalists to come watch. The question I want to ask is, why do you think Pyongyang is doing this and what message is North Korea trying to send out?
Well, I think it definitely is a very important, significant signal to the United States that the North Korea is now beginning to demolish all the test sites that North Korea promised to the United States they would. South Korean government mentioned that this is a very significant meaning that denuclearization of North Korea is just a beginning. So, I mean, it itself is a very good signal before we have a North Korea-US summit meeting. But we have to have two different perceptions of it. If things goes okay, I think this will be just a very good beginning for the future denuclearization of North Korea. I think the U.S. is still have South Korean government is very optimistic about this. Maybe because North Korea and the U.S. already have agreed upon many important things when Pompeo visited Pyongyang. So I think, they have a deal, they have pathways, and it will be just the beginning of all these long pathways. But a rather pessimistic view is that we can think about what happened before. I mean, they tested nuclear weapons and demolished the cooling tower, but afterwards, 2009, they tested again. So, some experts in the United States is a little bit skeptical about this, demolition of, Punggye-ri nuclear site.
You mentioned the skepticism there.
Mm-hmm.
What's notable is Pyongyang invited journalists, but no nuclear inspectors or experts. I mean, whether we can verify they've been dismantled properly is a question. This isn't a very good sign, wouldn't you say, though?
Yes, if the inspectors go in and inspect those nuclear sites, I think this can give a lot of information about what kinds of nuclear weapons and nuclear warheads North Korea have already. And based upon this information, I think the U.S. and inspectors, NIA inspectors would go in and check out what kinds of weapon system that North Korea has. So based upon the reporting and monitoring of North Korea, they can judge if this is enough monitoring or not. North Korea might have more sites and arsenals so that they can request more sites to be open and reported. But, it's sad that they didn't do any investigation and just demolished it. But I think this would mean that there has been already some agreement between North Korea and the United States not to do it because maybe not the U.S. has enough information about what sites and what kind of capabilities and production sites North Korea has, enough information of where to check out and where to request to open and see and report. Or maybe, the countries have agreed that the, all these verification process is very rigid. So maybe the U.S. might have judged that even though there is no verification of nuclear sites at Punggye-ri, U.S. is confident that they can go in and check out whether North Korea is cheating or not.
So yes, a little bit of a PR stunt to the international media. Apart from one notable absentee, as that was mentioned in the report, no journalists from Japan seem to be invited. Now, this omission is quite conspicuous because Japan was one of the original six-party talks members when North Korea previously made the denuclearization agreement. Do you think this is a deliberate snub of Japan?
Yes, you mentioned that, on the surface, it seems like North Korea is ignoring Japan because Japanese attitude towards North Korea until now has been very hardline and also had input to the United States policymakers to be more hawkish towards North Korea, requesting some more agenda to be added into the U.S. request to the North Koreans. But I think North Korea would eternally ignore Japan. I mean, Japan should be very important, partner to support economic aid to North Korea afterwards, as happened when there was implementation of Geneva Agreement in 1994. So maybe this is, I think, North Korean diplomatic strategies to make Japan passing more serious problem and making Abe to be more jealous about other countries gang up to deal with North Korea issues. Oh, Japan, we are only the one that's past eager to be partners, and maybe that's kind of diplomatic strategy to get more and more economic support from Japan.
So as you mentioned briefly earlier, this isn't the first time North Korea has put on this kind of demonstration for journalists. In 2008, journalists and diplomats were invited to the Yongbyon nuclear reactor where the cooling tower was destroyed, and that was broadcast all around the world. Iconic images at the time, but it kind of seemed to be just a PR stunt. Pyongyang was secretly still developing nuclear weapons in the background, and that tower's destruction was said to have little consequence to their program. Can we expect something different sometime? What signs are they that we can take them seriously this time?
Well, first, domestic situation is different. At that time, after 2008, demolishing of nuclear cooling system of our nuclear reactor, what happened afterwards was a power shift inside North Korea from Kim Jong-il to Kim Jong-un. So that time was not a good time for Kim Jong-un. In his initial phase, he needed to purge a lot of dissidents and to consolidate his power. So he needed to do a lot of nuclear weapon tests and a lot of external conventional weapon-based provocations. So, but now Kim Jong-un finally consolidated his power and also finished nuclear capabilities building. After last year. So I think domestic situation is more stable now compared to 2008. Of course, there are still some possibility that this could be another cheating. But when you think about some current, situations in Northeast Asia compared to 2008, in which George Bush, President of the United States at the time, was only, delving into some Afghanistan, Iraqi warfare, not much concern on North Korea. But this time, Trump's concern and interest in North Korea is tremendous. He's having a bilateral summit meeting with Kim Jong-un. So I think compared to that time, this time, the U.S. Entrapment on North Korea issue is much severer than that. So I think maybe this could be still interpreted as cheating, but the possibility for positive side is higher than negative side, I think.
Okay, so let's move on to the actual North Korea-US summit. So in recent developments that have been coming out, for example, North Korean state media have said new alternatives could be coming to resolve the issues with the US. And now Mike Pompeo as well, the US Secretary of State, has also mentioned that over the last few days that if Pyongyang does take significant steps towards denuclearization, the US would help North Korea achieve prosperity on par with South Korea. This all seems to be pointing towards economic incentives towards denuclearization. What do you think, Professor?
Yes, I think when Pompeo visited Pyongyang second time, the pivotal issue, I think, was what kinds of gaps there exist and how they can narrow down the gaps. I think from the U.S. side, some of the agenda that they have been arguing, for example, North Korea has to remove nuclear weapons first, then there will be some incentives by the states, and it should be quick and fast and one-shot dismantlement. These positions of the United States, I don't think was negotiable. I mean, North Korea might have accepted those attitudes of the United States. The thing is then what kinds of incentives would be given by the United States? There have been some namings, and like in two countries, relations will be normalized. Something like that. There will be softening of sanctions. Softening sanctions would not be possible until there's some significant steps towards denuclearization. So as you mentioned, some of the U.S. government and some company level investment in North Korea, so that North Korea would develop into the level of South Korea. I think that is a very tremendous incentive by the United States. By doing that, North Korea, I think, will be sure that the two countries' relationship has been finally normalized and came into the normal level. And by doing that, I think there will be more and more deepening relationship between two countries. So I think this is a very tremendous incentive by the United States, I think.
Okay, but very briefly, we've been down this road of economic incentives before. Isn't this just a pattern of history repeating itself? I mean, can we trust both parties to honor their deal?
That, I think, there is a very strange negotiation going on. Okay, let's think about it. The U.S., a very tremendous country, big country. North Korea has been always thinking that, oh, it's all because of the U.S. anti-North Korea policies that North Korea is developing nuclear weapons. The threat perception is there, but North Korea is guarding down its nuclear programs. That is very, ridiculous. I mean, from the realist perspective of what international relations scholars, there has been always balances, balance of power, balance of threat, balance of terror. But what North Korea is doing now is guarding down with some incentives that's not related to the security of North Korea when there still exists a security in the United States. So, I mean, it's unbelievable. Maybe Kim Jong-un is thinking totally differently about, its future of North Korea and his future. Trump, he's accepting North Korea and Kim Jong-un's proposal. So from theoretical point of view, international relations theoretical point of view, this deal is very an astonishing deal that never happened in history before.
Okay. Finally, just before we go, there are tentative reports that which say Chinese President Xi Jinping might be planning to go to Singapore for the North Korea-US summit. Now, along with that, there are also talks that President Moon Jae-in from South Korea should go as well, seeing as he brokered the inter-Korean talks. Could there be a possibility of three-way summit or four-way summit in Singapore in the next month?
Sure. President Moon Jae-in have repeatedly mentioned that the three-party or four-party based, declaration of the Korean War ending it would be possible. China is afraid that it would be excluded from that kind of talk. There have been more and more talks between North Korea and China. China going into Singapore is very understandable. It wants to be part of the Korean Peninsula issues. Does not want the U.S. to be the only country that deals with the Korean Peninsula issues. Korean Peninsula has been a very important buffer to China. China does not want to lose it. So if Xi Jinping goes to Singapore, that's very understandable behavior. If that happens, Moon Jae-in would go too.
Well, thank you for your time for coming in today. That's all we have time for. And as always, we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you very much.